Well, first of all, thank you, Neil, so much for doing this. I think actually it was your idea in the first place, was it not?
It was actually, yeah.
Yeah.
I said to Adrian, when are you going to interview me?
So, as you know, the first question is please tell us who you are in a family context, how the family you were born into has informed your life and your work in the UK.
Okay, so I was born in West London in 1959, and my father had come over from West Bengal, Calcutta, in 1952, and met my mother in Gloucester, who's white British and actually born in Newport, but from the West Country. And so they had met and got married in 1957. And yeah, I came along in 1959. So um, I lived in West London for the first 4 years, then to Essex for the next four. And then I ended up in the Midlands, which was my father's job. I think if I'd moved somewhere else, my life would have been very different. But there you go. We can all say that in some ways, can't we?
Do you want to expand a little on that? On
Uh, well, it was the school I had to get, secondary school I had to go to, which features heavily in why I wish I hadn't been there. But there you go.
Hmm.
Um, I've managed to reconcile things a lot later. But so my father had a large family in India, or I did, I suppose you could say. But he didn't talk about them at all. There was a picture of his brothers and sisters and his parents, and he never spoke about them. He had a Taj Mahal in the, and he wasn't Muslim, he was Hindu. But so that was it. That was all I had of India. And I think an elephant carving. That's all I remember of growing up. So I had precious little, if anything, to actually work out who I was identity wise. And living in this white highland of Leamington Spa when the National Front were, we moved there just before the National Front got really going. So that was one of their strongholds. So I don't know if you can imagine what that might have been like. But there I was. There were hardly any people of colour around in Leamington. There's a handful of other South Asian people who'd moved into the south of the town, and we were living in the outskirts in a sort of near a village, really. So yeah, that's so I had 10 years of that experience, um, which was not exactly pleasant, should we say. I've got a sister who's 2.5 years younger than me, and she is. It's difficult to. I didn't look like I am now. I lost all my hair when 17 years ago. I looked quite South Asian. I was different to the wonderful white, mainly, well, but the white Highlands of Leamington Spa in Warwickshire, who, as I've discovered as I've gone along in life, are one of the most racist counties in England anyway. So, to say I was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, had a lot of racial terrorism at school, I think, and goes straight into that description because it was 5 out of 7 years were total of that. Physical abuse, battering, constant name calling on a daily basis.
Hmm.
So I kind of didn't exactly leave there with any qualifications worth having. And I didn't, and my self esteem was so battered to pieces that took me 20 years to recover from it. I had
Was
to get therapy eventually.
before you got therapy, was there any support for you in the school among anyone?
Nothing.
Staff?
Nothing.
No.
There were two friends, John and Paul, who I got to know, and they were my best friends, and they kind of were the only sort of my peer group. That was about it, really, till sixth form. And or there was another chap I used to sit next to who was a bit neutral, but he wasn't bad. But there's two teachers who were outstanding. Yeah, one of them is still alive, and I have caught up with him, and yeah, there's a lovely end point to the horrible trauma and suffering, really. And the other teacher is I don't know where he is. I'd love to get in touch with him because he taught me how to play squash, picked me for the basketball team, even though I wasn't good enough, and was there when it counted, really. And he taught me squash after school in his own time. So he really did see the sort of damaged person that I was and kind of gave me some skills to. And I played squash for the next 20 years after I left
Mhm.
school. It was something that he gave me, which I could always use.
Yes, yes.
But it was more to do with him just treating me like everyone else, really. And that's most of the rest of the teachers were in this. It was a public school. That's the problem. So they were all kind of stuck up their own,
Mm.
proverbials. And yeah, yeah, yeah.
Was there any,
So,
was
hmm?
there anyone at the school of mixed heritage, or was everybody else?
um, Not really. No, there was a couple of other South Asian people and one guy. It was a boarding school part of it, so anyone was in the board who was in the borders, and they didn't. They had their own class, and didn't we didn't really talk to them apart from in sport. Didn't have anything to do with them. They ate separately. It was like a separate life. So anyone I could have been able to relate to was all in that class that was beyond my access.
And you didn't board?
No,
No, no.
no, I had a scholarship.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was award is the wrong word for it, really.
Mm, mm.
Prison sentence was the correct definition of that because I got good scores in 11 plus 1971.
It underlines, doesn't it? Your experience underlines the I was going to say global damage, but global in your life damage that racism does. That
Yeah,
it affected your learning as well as your very self.
it did everything about me. Every single part of my being was affected by it. So, yeah, like I say, it was. I started kind of making some progress in life, probably about nearly 10 years after I left that school.
Gosh, it's a long.
I had to kind of go through a process of, yeah. Thankfully, I met some really good people in London. Went to live in London as an 18-year-old and found some fantastic people in the community there, which really helped me.
Mhm.
And then went to Liverpool after that and found an even more incredible community. So that was by the time I was 27. That's what got finally I was able to do stuff which I other people would have done when they were 21, probably.
You talked a little earlier about going into therapy as a result of this horrendous racism that you received. Were you still quite a young man when you did that? Or were you?
I was nearly 40.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yes.
I had had a little bit of counselling on the way, but yeah, combination of it all did help me to put it right in the background. But I put it this way: when the school used to write to me and say, "Do you want to come to the reunion?" and my answer was always no. Yeah,
I can understand
yeah.
that very well. As a matter of interest, was your therapist mixed heritage?
No, not at all.
But that
No.
person got it, understood.
Yeah, yeah, they did. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah. No, most of the people who've helped me have been white British people. So that's the thing about growing up in a white Highland that you end up mirroring. Really, that's what phrase I noted down. You mirror the environment you're in. So if you ask other people, I've read Natalie Morris's book and the Natalie and Naomi Evans's book about mixed heritage, and all of them are. And if you read their books, you will find them. They've interviewed various people in various contexts, and the ones who have grown up in White Highlands like me have very little identity with um, their non-white British persona,
Mm.
and even the ones who had some heritage, going on. We're not all as lucky as our Carla had when he was sent to his Saturday school. Yeah. And my kids, are married to a Polish woman, and we got our children into the Polish Saturday school for the same reason.
Mhm. Mm.
So I didn't want them to miss out on their identities, and they know exactly who they are.
Do they?
So, but the point is that you mirror what's around you, because that's what you've got.
But you
And
mirror, but you mirror what's around you at the expense of yourself.
well, of course, yeah. Oh, yeah. But it's the only reality so you just
Mm.
get on with it, really. Um, so I think going to London obviously was pretty amazing to just see the multicultural aspect, even in 1978 when there was less than there are now. But and then Liverpool, I ended up living in Liverpool 8, Toxteth area, which again was the multicultural part of the city. So I gained everything later.
Yes,
Lots of friends, lots of race equality work came a bit later. I mean, going to Liverpool was a turning point, really,
right. Yes.
when I was 21.
So, moving on to work, please tell us who you are in the context of the work you do now, the allyship for race equality, and any other areas that you'd like to talk to, mixed heritage and cultural awareness work. And if you'd like to begin with how you got there, and then,
Well, when I got to Liverpool, I was doing business studies, believe it or not. I was just following the wrong direction for about 7 years. Finally, I was unemployed, and then I thought, well, I need to do what I felt like doing at the end of school, but I had no agency to get going, which was sort of voluntary work for a whole year with older people and mental health issues. Excuse me. And then I got a job as an unqualified social worker in 1987, which is when I was, 27, 28. And yeah, that really, I was more prepared for stuff by then because I had 6 years of living in Liverpool and lots of people living in community and strong things, really. Lots more strong things than negative. So yeah, what else did I get out of Liverpool? I mean, people were just straight talking, and that was very difficult initially, but I grew to like that because you knew where you stood with people.
mhm.
Um, and yeah, got involved in a lot of church activity, and there were a lot of really good people in those churches, some of whom gave me a bit of healing along the way, I should say.
Mhm.
And then I got involved in the race equality and anti-racist movements in Liverpool that had been going since the riots, really, or before the riots. So I ended up getting involved as a volunteer in quite a lot of local projects and started to go out training people on anti-racism, which was way back. Started that in 1990.
Mhm.
So that shows you what nearly a decade of living in Liverpool had done for me.
Mm.
Turned me round to someone who understood more about myself and was much more confident in thinking, well, got to stop this because I had, got to do something
Yes.
to try and prevent what I went through somehow. So that social work, I was involved in all the care groups from cradle to grave, you name it, I did it along the way. And but I also helped to set up in the fringes of my role, the bits that I wasn't getting paid for, but I chose to do. I was involved in setting up Mary Seacole House, which is the
Mhm.
black mental health kind of day facility in Liverpool, and there had been nothing like it before. And I'm proud to say that here we are. It opened in 1991, and 34 years later, it's still open.
Wow.
So I was really quite chuffed because I go back. I've just been back on this weekend, and yeah, it's still going amazingly. So I was involved in lots of local people from Liverpool 8 and elsewhere in the city to set that up. It's a real multidisciplinary, multicultural effort. You know, across the ethnicities and beyond, really. So I learned a lot through doing that. I was on the management committee. I used to interview for recruits and troubleshoot and secretary of the management. I did that for about 7 years. So that was really well. I gained a lot of skills and knowledge really doing that. And then I was became a mental health act social worker, an approved social worker, 1993. So for various reasons, we decided to go down south at that point. Partly my health, partly the prevailing issues going on in the city at the time. There was a lot of drug gang warfare, and where we lived was right in the centre of it, put it that way. So, yeah, we came down to, I moved from Earth to Pluto. So, coming to Bournemouth and Poole, which was only chosen by me because I worked out there was 5 degrees warmer and I wouldn't get chest infections all the
Okay.
time.
Yes.
And that bit worked out very well.
Okay.
That that aim was completely met. As for everything else,
Mm.
slightly different scenario.
Yeah.
Um, so I didn't do any. There's virtually no race quality work goes on in my particular patch.
Even now. Even now.
Even now, yeah. Oh, even now, yeah. I mean, it's there are not many people from racialized minorities or global majority heritage backgrounds would move here. They just wouldn't. I understand why they
Mm.
wouldn't move here.
Mm.
I was pretty surprised that I'd done it really after I'd worked out about took me about 3 years to work out what it was like. But so thankfully the job was horrendous where I was working and the organisation was horrible. So I managed to get a job in Hampshire, which is about 25 miles up the road. It was the New Forest. And that was very different. And thank goodness I managed to find it. So I certainly got stuck in again to anti-racist race equality work as soon as I got there. So met some people in the Southampton community, and then in 2003, the David Bennett inquiry created the Delivering Race Equality and Mental Health. It was a strategy that lasted 6 years. I was heavily involved in all of that. So I was advisor and chair of this, that, and the other governance groups, and you name it. Really, I was completely up to my shoulders in work with it, and I was doing mental health social work as
Wow.
well. So yeah, I was going to London to national meetings about 4 times a year. It's that kind of. So I was really did a lot of work in that. Worked very hard, but nothing changed at all, which taught me a lesson about
Mm.
what can happen with systemic and institutional racism on a grand scale in the NHS. So I wasn't. I was employed by the local authority, Hampshire, but I was working in a multidisciplinary community mental health team. So I had access to all the NHS staff, and I wouldn't say they were evil. They weren't, kind of doing things by kind of commission. It was all about institutional racism and them not realising what they were doing really. And I think Southampton had its fair share of multicultural areas and different experiences of people. And I never worked in Southampton itself, but I came across people who did, and I used to meet up with them, and that was how I. So yeah, there's lots of gypsies and travellers there. I got to know the organisations working with them, and I ended up being on the management committee of that. Forest Bus, it was called. They used to have a mobile service in a old bus, double decker bus. They used to take it round to the gypsy traveller sites, and I ended up doing cultural awareness training in gypsies and travellers culture, along with their director of the charity. And I also did Polish cultural awareness because of the large, travelling and migration. Southampton had 22,000 Polish people at one stage. So I was there at the right time with the right information and did several sessions that people rang me up about 2 years later because of all the information I gave them. So that's the sort of input I was having. Um, yeah, and so then it all stopped in about 2010, and things were fairly quiet for the rest of the time I was there on this subject. Nothing really much was. I mean, that coincides with a certain government change in 2010, I would say. Equalities became fairness. Do you remember that
Indeed.
one?
Mm.
Etc., etc. Uh, yeah. So I don't call David Cameron El Diablo and George Osborne Count Dracula for nothing. Anyway, um, so that's why the 2010s were nothing much happened because all the equalities posts and the diversity and inclusion were getting cut and stopped
Mm.
pretty much.
Mm.
Lehman Brothers post stuff, all that. So really, that decade, I retired at 2019, thinking that was the end of it, really. And little did I realise COVID was coming along, did I? To change all my plans. I was ready to travel the world and follow my hobbies. did all the right things in this retirement kind of plan thing that they gave us, and just about to go, and instead I went. So yeah, everything stopped on March the 23rd, 2020, didn't it? So but what happened then was that all the training that I would have missed because you had to go there. I thought you had to beg for the money to send you for 250 to £300 worth of a day course to pay the trainers and train fares on top. I would never have got any of it, even if I'd still been. There's no way anyone had any budgets. But suddenly it was all online like this, and
Yes.
it was free.
Yes.
So I thought, okay, okay, so I'm retired and can't go out, can't travel, can't follow my hobbies, can potter around in the garden. What else is there to do? And so thankfully, lots of people who are operating much totally online, of course, started sending details of these courses and various events. So I started going, on them. And wonderful events who were. And then I came across early 2021, Helen Morgan, who's the psychodynamic psychotherapist kind of lead manager at Tavistock Clinic in London,
Yes.
who had done this incredible kind of watershed session called Whiteness, Is It a Problem for Our Time? That was how she titled it. And I thought, what's this? Never heard of whiteness. So I think so here I was having done more than 30 years of some kind of input on anti-racism, race equality, and diversity, equality, and inclusion. And I'd never heard of whiteness. So it kind of blew my mind a bit, really. And this was an incredible 45-minute presentation, which turned on about 100 light bulbs all at once. So I started thinking, okay, so what's this all about then? What have I missed? And I began to realize the more I looked into this, that this thing called allyship occurred. And then in September, I came across White Allies Network, for example. And I can't remember how that happened, to be honest. I think I must have just done a Google search like other people did.
I did.
And yeah, so that year was discovery about, shall we say, the flip side of anti-racist work. And I've been involved for more than 30 years in doing stuff to try and solve it as a victim, I suppose you could say.
Hmm.
And now this was Helen Morgan and Robin DiAngelo kind of who also discovered just through, her recommendations in her presentation, to be honest. So I discovered the flip side of, oh yeah, and I'd been involved in solidarity for Latin America in the 1980s when I was in Liverpool. I knew what solidarity was. And I kind of realised that that's what was actually going to be needed now. And Black Lives Matter message in June 2020 was stop being non-racist and start being anti-racist, and that was the kind of I followed that pathway
And
basically.
silence is violence, they said, didn't they?
That's right. White silence is violence.
Yes.
Yeah, and one of my colleagues who I ended up on the national approved mental health professionals steering group, and one of my colleagues there says white silence is fear.
Hmm.
In
Interesting.
Britain, it's more fear than it is violence,
Yes.
because thank goodness the police haven't got guns,
Yeah.
apart from the squads that are called on especially.
Yes.
Otherwise, it probably would be.
But also, you talk about not having come across whiteness before, and that strikes me as a white woman as so indicative of the inherent nature of whiteness, that the whiteness, this country is all I know about, the UK, but that it is the default. It is never named. It is the thing without which, apparently, until it's investigated,
Yeah,
until it's interrogated.
that's right. So I learned all that stuff, and it was a fairly steep learning curve, really. So by the time the end of 2021, and I had all those, and I'd already read Alcala's book, I read Rene de Lodge's book, and it was kind of looking at the political analysis of that more and the sociological, and then Helen Morgan's was psychological, I would say.
Yes.
So there was a cross section of all the inputs, really. And out of that, I started realizing that people needed to know about what had been going on in the Empire stuff, which, of course, I know White Allies Network, before I joined, had started on that journey.
Yes.
The 1894 carve up of Africa and all that stuff, and obviously the slave trade, Indian subcontinents, Robert Clive till Earl Mountbatten,
Mm.
all those things.
Mm.
And then I even discovered about the Opium Wars in China, didn't I? But that was a bit later. So I think those had all prepared me for realizing that this needed to be a bit of a journey. So I planned this PowerPoint presentation, and the first thing I managed to do was the person who I had done the Gypsy Traveller cultural stuff with, she had um, stopped that job because the county council cut all the money from the project in 2013. She was made unemployed. She ended up being a lecturer at Winchester University and invited me to a session there to do some race quality stuff. And I'd already been going to do other things. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. So I did this allyship, whiteness, and race quality. So I basically laid it out of um, the legacy of empire, the both Indian subcontinent, the 34 trillion pounds that Saturn Sangera talks about in empire land, which got siphoned out by Britain, the 18 trillion or nearly 19 trillion that University of West Indies, that's a later slide, didn't know it then, it's in there now. So then the slave owners and the 2015 Act,
Mm-hmm.
not 2015, the 1834 Act, and which lasted being
Yes.
paid. So all those
The death
things that people,
lasted.
yeah,
Yes.
people, I knew that people wouldn't know any of those because I didn't know them until
Mm.
2021. I didn't know any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I probably knew a bit more about the slave owners thing, and that was all because of David Olusoga's documentary. I think that's where a lot of people found it. So that was the part one, and then I showed Helen Morgan's presentation clips from this one she did in December 2020, and some clips from Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility and it was a book launch, and she did a whole load of slides and talked through that in 2018. So that was kind of introducing what whiteness was, and they were talking about it, both of them, and that was kind of the way of teaching it without me trying to talk it through.
Mm-hmm.
And then through discussion groups, and then on to allyship, which I had found out more about from various other people around the country who'd given me a few templates, and I found out quite a lot of pictograms. And there's the 7 A's of allyship, which is a really big pictogram that's used in a lot of NHS work, whatever there is of it. That's what's used. So I had all this kind of material, and then the end by the end of the in the I hadn't quite honed it, but the reaction from these students, well, they were fairly stunned really, and they contacted me through my friend, their lecturer, who kind of said, look, they'd like to email you. So they sent me this email and said, we were absolutely totally staggered by the stuff you gave us, and we've been talking about it all week as a whole group.
So this is Winchester University.
Winchester University social work students, yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought, wow, I'm onto something here if that's the reaction they gave. Um, so that then I started a kind of after work interest group, gathering together all the people I knew from about 4 or 5 different authorities on Zoom, and that went for about 3 sessions in 2022. So I was gathering momentum, and then I got invited to join the National AMP Leads AMHP steering group as kind of co-opted member because they wanted to do work on anti-racism, and that was 2.5 years ago. And they started. I showed them my training, the two co-chairs, and they sort of opened some doors for me and said, "Okay, well, we'll get you some invitations because this is really important. People need to know." So I've been doing in the last 18 months, yeah, Cumbria, Staffordshire, Shropshire, West Berkshire, Newcastle, Middlesbrough.
And are these health trusts you've been working
Yeah,
inside?
they're all local authorities.
Local authorities.
Yeah, local authorities. Yeah, because I am a social worker, and that's
Yes.
where the people who I know are.
Yeah.
So it's adult social services mainly, mental health act social workers more specifically,
Okay.
and a mixture, and some children's.
Okay. What a journey, Neil. What a journey.
Yeah, it is a journey really, and what I can say about what I said at the beginning, which is that there's a happier ending to my school kind of trauma. Um, in 2019, I got this. I don't, to be honest with you, I don't know how I got on the email list for the school, but I did. And there was an email from someone saying, "Do you want to meet up with the old Warwickians, as they're known as, Warwick School, in Wessex, down the road from me?" And I answered back and said, "No, I don't. Why would I want to go back to a school that did this to me?" And I gave 6 bullet points. So this chap, well, I think he was fairly shocked, and he sent my email to the person who deals with all the old boys around the world, in fact, and she showed it to the head, and he sent me an email saying, "God, we didn't realise how horrible it was." I mean, these people have arrived a long, long time afterwards. I left there in 1978, and this was 41 years. You
Wow.
know,
Yes.
why would they know about what went on in that school in 1970? So the head said, "Would you like to come and visit the school? It's so different now." He said, "I can guarantee you it's not like that at all. Would it help you to move on somehow if you saw how it had changed?" So I kind of thought, yeah, I would appreciate this. So everything was set up for March 2020. And
Oh,
guess what happened then?
yes.
So over a year later, I think it was actually 2 years later, Anne, the person who coordinates all these old ones, sent me an email saying, "You know what? I've realised that we never did that visit with you. Everything's back to normal now because it took till early 2022.
Yes.
Would you like to get that, going?" So long story short, um, they arranged for me to go to the school, and the head, it was a new head by this time, and they're really good. The previous one was good. This one's even better, to be honest. So I was. They arranged for me to meet that history economics teacher, who was the main person for me, who I could at least see, who kept me going, was always positive, took me on trips, and was just there really. So yeah, I met him and gave him a 3-minute hug. It was pretty cathartic issues
So
going on.
this was the man who taught you when you were
Yeah, the one
at
who taught me when I was in school. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so he was kind of one of the people who I'd always held a candle with positive memories in it.
yes.
So yeah, and they took me around the school, and it was a bit of a daze really. But and I didn't go to certain places, and they
Mhm.
understood why I didn't, and I
Mhm.
told them what had happened.
Mhm.
Um, so that was that, and we had this chat. Gave me lunch and everything, and I said, "Look, I'm doing all this. This was just at the beginning of the allyship stuff." So I said, "I don't know if you'd be interested. I can send you the stuff." So I sent the head some slides and various things I'd done. I wondered whether anything would come out of it. But at least I'd gone there, and so they said, "Oh, actually, we would be interested if you came and did some, interviews."
Oh,
So the teacher who, yeah, the
training.
teacher who had taken over from my old one, when he retired in mid 90s, was the one who they got me in touch with him, and he's a wonderful chap called John, and we had these amazing phone calls, and he set up two interviews for me. One, a podcast with him that was going on to the school. Have got this kind of, everyone's got online stuff. There's a school podcast system, so he had recorded that with me, and then there was a video interview with the sixth form students, a handful of them, and some teachers and the head, and they interviewed me about stuff a bit like you're interviewing with me now. And it was incredible to be in that environment in this, this school I remembered with such horrible memories. So I was walking around these corridors with a completely different role now,
Mm.
and it was profound because the head at the end of this teaching session I did, he said, "Well, here I am with the teacher, my old one, who apparently he had been there for a year." And he said, "Well, he was already great, but the one who took over for him, the one who was interviewing me, he said, they're both here. And they're the reason why I wanted to become a teacher. And he ended up being the head of the school he was at." So he said this was pretty mind blowing for him to have everyone in the same room of me. And at the end of that, I said, "Well, it'd be nice to come back again, wouldn't it? So he said, "Yeah, I'll think about it." And then about 6 months later, I went back and did an hour's full PowerPoint slides and everything to the welfare staff.
Allyship training.
Yeah, yeah. And now they want me to do a whole day of inset training.
Wow, Neil.
Yeah. So I mean that you can't get a much better reconciliation than that, can you? Really?
Well, it's for you to say and you to feel about how it is, but if it feels that way to you, then that is fantastic. Did they, did anyone apologize?
Oh yeah, of course they did. Yeah, yeah. I mean they were juice when I first arrived. Oh, of course they did. Yeah. And again, the first slide I have in my presentation says the brokenness of our past is not our fault, but the healing for the future is our responsibility. And what they did was exactly that. So it wasn't their fault that what was going on 40 years before. How could any of them be responsible for it? They acknowledged it, and that's why they invited me there to, do the healing. And then they probably didn't think that anything would come of that, but they're actually now taking part in the healing for the future,
That is a
aren't
wonderful
they?
story, Neil. That's extraordinary.
Yeah,
And also speaks hugely, I feel, to your courage to going back in the first place.
yeah. It was quite harrowing when
Mm,
I first got there.
mm.
Finally, the last visit I had, I finally got round to looking at They used to have these old school photographs, which were done with the bloke, yeah,
Yes.
the chap, and I found myself, and I remembered about half the class from 44 years before,
Wow.
which was quite good, really, because I think I wouldn't wanted to have seen it at all until I'd done all this reconciliation. But it
Yes.
was quite interesting. And then the woman who runs the old boys thing, the magazine which goes out online and in all around the world, she had a photograph of me after the first visit, and then another photograph of my presentation in the second visit. And she said they're deliberately trying to balance out all the people who left that school to become high court judges and military, and Christian Horner, believe it or not. The Red Bull Formula One
No,
married Jerry Halliwell.
no, sorry, I'm a
He
bit.
was an old boy. He
Okay,
went there as well. So
okay.
all these dignitaries are the ones who they passed news about, and they wanted to put me in there to kind of say, "Look, this is what the school's like these days," and he represents that
Wow, fantastic.
allyship, isn't it?
Yes, it is.